There's nothing like being in the stands cheering on your favorite team. Game Time is your hack to unlocking amazing tickets in just a few taps. Plus, their Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets at the best price. Fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. Get the best deals on sports tickets. Download the Game Time app and create an account to start searching for tickets to upcoming games and events. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time.
Hey, warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, old Shaggy Bets, Nate Hornung. He does great work over at Your Betting News. We're going to recap what we all saw over the weekend, the greatness that we saw in the Big Ten on Sunday with Illinois getting the job done against Nebraska, just the landscape in general of that conference. We're going to be taking a little bit of a look at the SEC as well, previewing some games from Monday and a few teams that he feels like are a little bit under the radar in the final segment. Gonna get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUDEN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had ourselves a great day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
If you've been taking the Nebraska unders, you got another under, as they've actually been one of the best teams to the under in all of college basketball this year. With this game going under now, 16 unders to 6 overs, but Nebraska back-to-back losses for them, 78-69. Illinois gets the job done as Illinois outscores Nebraska 78-69 in the second half, and Nebraska shot it well from 3. 15 of 35 from 3. Now they also shot 10 out of 24 on their 2-point shots, but for Illinois, they control the glass. They win the rebound battle 40-27. In this game, Keaton Wagler stepped up in a big way. 28 points, goes 4 of 9 from 3-point range. For Illinois, they play even up in the turnover battle, 8-8, but they get revenge and they rob the bank. We saw a pair of top 25 teams in Florida and Alabama go at it, and for Alabama, not what they were looking for. 100-77, they fall to Florida, a Florida team that seems to be getting things a little bit more online. For Alabama, Charles Bediako, only 6 points in this game. He came back to college, and, well, right now it's been a little bit up and down for him. And for Florida, all their starters, aside from Xavier Lee, scored at least 14 points in this game. Florida wins that rebound battle by a count of 44-33, with having Ruben Chinyelu go off for 17 boards, 14 points. Florida just 3 of 13 from 3-point range. They did an A-shot pile driving the ball down the line for Florida. They win the turnover battle 18-2. So that was a big reason why they were able to get the job done. And the Jerome Tang era right now in old Manhattan, the Little Apple, it is not going well. They got completely lambasted, 95-61 against Iowa State, and Kansas State now 8-14 against the spread thus far this season. So they have not been profitable for you. Iowa State 13-8-1, so they've been able to do a solid job there, as Joshua Jefferson was able to supply 19 points, 8 boards, 5 assists. For Iowa State, 14 of 27 from 3-point range. For Iowa State, they do a solid job winning the turnover battle, 14-12. They win the rebound battle, 39-24. For Kansas State, you had PJ Haggerty go off for 23 points, and really not a lot of help outside of that. And Maryland has been a wet match in a dark cave thus far this season. They get blown out by 30 points against Purdue. For Purdue, they had lost 3 straight games, and this was a very good get-right spot in for Maryland, now 8-13 against the spread for them thus far this season. As for Purdue in this 93-63 win, they go 15 of 30 from 3. Fletcher Lawyer, 7-10 from the outside, 29 points. Braden Smith, he had 19 points. The rest of the starters only had a combined 14 points, but they didn't need them because for Maryland, they were rough with their offense. They lose the turnover battle 12-8. They lose the rebound battle 36-26. And for Maryland, in terms of their 2-point shots, they go 13 out of 32. So Purdue, they were able to do a great job there with Trey Kaufman-Rent also being able to supply the team with 10 rebounds as well. Other games that we saw in college basketball basketball on Sunday. East Tennessee State has been an interesting team, 86-72. They get the job done against Wofford. Wofford has actually been a team that has been able to cover quite a few numbers as far this season. You take a look at the SoCon, and you've got some of your most demonstrative teams to not covering and covering in the conference, as Mercer has been the top team at 16-4 against the spread, and Wofford has been 12-8 against the spread themselves, but a little bit of a rough one here as they do lose that turnover battle 10-6. They lose the rebound battle 35-24, and for East Tennessee State, you had Cam Morris be able to step up 22 big points in this one, so that was able to get it done for them. Another interesting game. Florida Atlantic has actually been a pretty solid team against the spread this far this season, and East Carolina has been a big giant mess, but right now for Florida Atlantic, they're dealing with injuries, and they lose as a double-figure favorite, 76-75 to East Carolina. East Carolina 7-14 against the spread, Florida Atlantic 13-8, but on this day for East Carolina, who's been awful from three-point range, 8 of 17 from three-point range. Jordan Riley, 35 big points in this one. Cannon Carlisle tried to give it a go, 16 minutes, as many points as myself, so that was not necessarily great for them. Memphis has been a very shaky team thus far this season, and Tulane goes on the road. They knock them off by a count of 78-76. Tulane goes 10 of 24 from three-point range, and for the old Fighting Penny Hardaways, they're now a nice hearty 11-10 against the spread. They've actually been able to make you a little bit of money, but it just feels like they've been so disappointing this year. 10-11 overall in terms of their straight-up record, 4 of 20 from three-point range, and Tulane, they had on their side Rome Brumba. He was able to give the team 27 points, so Tulane finds a way to be able to get the job done. Very nice win for them. We see a lot of Metro Atlantic action happen on Sundays, and for Merrimack, the old Merrymen, 75-58. They're able to take down Sacred Heart as Merrimack totals have just been getting set way too high. They're now 16 unders to 7 overs thus far this season, and you've got 3 teams in the conference, Iona, Mount St. Mary's, along with Merrimack, that have 16 unders to 7 overs this season, and KVR Kennedy, shout out to him, very big day here for Merrimack, 21 points, 7 rebounds. For Merrimack, they only go 9 of 30 from 3, but they win that turnover battle 16-5, so they were able to get a nice cover out there as well. Other games out there in the old Metro Atlantic, you did see Mount St. Mary's, one of those good under teams, be able to play for you. Yet another under, 72-65. They get the win against Manhattan. This was a very interesting game against the spread, as that was a spread that was hovering right around 7-8, so it depended upon what number you got, but Mount St. Mary's, who's been turning the ball over a ton thus far this season, they actually did a little bit better job here. Still lost the turnover battle 13-8, but they go 9-24 from three-point range, and Manhattan has been just so ghastly in terms of their defense thus far this season. As a matter of fact, I'll go a step further for the Metro Atlantic. Every single team has played more unders than overs in this conference. Marist, they were able to get a win and cover their 8 overs to 12 unders thus far this season. Quinnipiac 9 overs to 14 unders. St. Peter's actually played an over against Ryder. Ryder's now 7 overs to 13 unders. St. Peter's 7 overs to 12 unders. That was just a harebrainy, insane game in which you saw Ryder be able to win 81-78. So that was something that was very unforeseen. And Siena has been a pretty solid against the spread team for you. They get the win. They get the cover against Canisius. They're now up to 14-9 against the spread. 78-63 final in that one. So always nice to be able to get some Metro Atlantic play out there. We always see ourselves a little bit of a Horizon League play as well. And for UW Green Bay, they've actually been a very good cover team for you this far this season. 13-9 against the spread. But Wright State, they were the right side. 83-75 the final, as 7 of 16 is what UW Green Bay shot from 3-point range, but they lose the turnover battle 10-5, and UW Green Bay, not the most stout team on the glass, 28-26. They lose that battle, and Wright State gets the cover, things going 25 out of 28 at the free throw line. And this has been a Wright State team that they themselves have been a really nice story this year. They've been able to step it up on defense. They're now 14-7 against the spread, so they've been able to get the job done, and they've been able to get you quite a few covers as well. If you're looking at some of the lesser teams against the spread in all of college basketball, old Kansas City, 5 covers in their 20 results against D1 competition. They're 5-15 against the spread. They had to go up against the St. Thomas Tommies on Sunday, and well, the St. Thomas Tommies, they gave them the Tommy gun in this one, as they won 99-64 as 18.5 point favorites. They cover very easily. UMKC has skid mark on the underpants of college basketball, 5 of 24 from 3-point range. St. Thomas 18 out of 39 from 3 with Carter Bejerke. Hopefully I got that correct. He went 10 of 14 from 3-point range all by himself. So for UMKC, it's really not going well for those guys thus far this season. Duquesne, it's been a little bit wobbly, up, down, all around for them. They're able to get a nice win. They're able to get a nice cover as they're 9-10-1 against the spread this season. They take down Rhode Island by a kind of 76-61 in a Atlantic 10 that has been seeing all sorts of intrigue, to say the least. Colorado and TCU have been two very intriguing teams as well. It's a TCU team that away from home, they've actually been able to cover some numbers, but on this day, Colorado was able to get them good. 87-61 the final. As for Colorado, 11-23 from 3. They win the turnover battle 10-8, and for TCU, a nice hearty 5-23 from 3-point range. That was a little bit less than tremendous for them. And in terms of Big Ten action, two teams that are probably not going to be going to the NCAA tournament, Penn State and Minnesota. The state with the smallest strengths in the union, Minnesota, does fall 77-75 final in this one. And for Penn State, it certainly has been an adventure for them against the spread thus far this season. They're just 9-13 against the spread. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, 9-12-1 against the spread. So neither of these teams have been profiting for you whatsoever. But hey, for Penn State, they're playing quite a few overs because they're just not playing any defense whatsoever. But on this day, 7-18 from 3-point range, and Freddie De Leon was able to provide 25 high-quality points. So they were able to find a way to be able to get the job done there. And as a matter of fact, you take a look at this Penn State team thus far this season with regards to over percentage, 13 overs to 9 unders. So that's about 59%. Maryland getting back to them, 14 overs to 7 unders thus far this season. So they've been able to do a great job on that front, and Oregon did enter into the day as one of your worst teams against the spread in all of college basketball. Iowa against the spread, 14-7 against the spread. We'll see if we can get you a final there, as they were the late game of the night. And man, for Oregon, it just has not been great, to say the least. Entered in the day 6-15 against the spread, while Iowa, Dice Sterling, 13-7 against the spread. And that continued as they lost to Iowa by a count of 84-66. It was so bad that the walk-on and Drew Carter got a start in this game, and for Oregon, 6-25 from 3-point range. Iowa, 10-22 from 3-point range. Iowa was able to win the turnover battle by a count of 9-5. For Oregon, they actually win the rebound battle 31-26. That's not necessarily the forte of Iowa, but off the bench, you were able to have Alvaro Fogurius give you 15 points, 8 rebounds, and Bennett Sturtz, he just took it upon himself to be able to get Iowa this cover. 32 points, 4 of 6 from 3, 7 assists, 0 turnovers, so that was great. And then to wrap it up, you also had one of your better over teams in all of college basketball in action as well. In Louisiana Monroe, they're now up to 15 overs to 6 unders thus far this season, as they play a nice high-scoring slobber knocker against Coast Carolina. Coast Carolina 83-79. They get the win, but no cover, as Coastal goes 13-27 from 3-point, which with AJ Dantzler dancing all around for 32 points. But hey, for Louisiana Monroe, you did have Christian Lewis supply the team with 20 points, so they did a nice job in terms of being able to hold in there. And the SoCon has had a few interesting teams with regards to their over and under rate, as you've had the Chattanooga Mocs be a team that's been a little bit up down all around this far this season. They were able to play an over on Sunday in Western Carolina. They've been 11 overs to 8 unders thus far this season. Sanford, another team that has a pretty high over rate. They're up to 12 overs, 8 unders, and a push. They were able to take it to Western Carolina 88-74, so that was another over for both of these teams. And Sanford's starting to figure it out. 10-24 from 3-point range. They only took 48 field goal attempts, but they went 30-41 at the free throw line. So got a lot of trips to the charity stripe out there. So that one was a very intriguing one, to say the least. And if you're taking a look at trend-wise what we're getting in college basketball right now, it certainly has been a recent run that has been very good for both unders and underdogs. If you look overall for the season, the under rate is hovering in that neighborhood about 50.6%, 1,915 unders, 1,867 overs, while the underdogs are hitting at about 51.2%, 1,937 and 1,844 against the spread. Over the last 7 days, the underdogs hitting more around 53%, 178 and 157, and the under rate is 51%, 171 unders to 164 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now. That's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat it up with our good friend Nate Hornung, aka Shaggy Betts, right here on Coast to Coast Seats, with myself, Greggy Peters, and now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is vsin.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coach with myself, James Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Nate Hornung aboard. You know him better as Shaggy Bets. He does a tremendous job over at Your Betting News and the show Up Your Units. Looking at a little bit of everything. Obviously, it's Super Bowl weekend. We've got one big game in football, but we've got about 1 trillion college basketball games. He's doing a great job with that one game. He's doing a great job with the 100 million billion. He's doing a great job with just what is a cornucopia of sports in general. Right now, you're able to follow him on the old Twitter /X at Shaggy_Bets. And Nate, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Greg. Happy to be here. Let's talk some college hoops.
Absolutely. And Nate, before we dive into the games on Monday and this week, I want to get your thoughts on what we saw in Lincoln, Nebraska on Sunday with Nebraska. They fall to Illinois. Illinois is able to get their revenge, and it just feels like we're in for a really good landscape in general out there in the Big Ten.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, Nebraska starting off 20-0, they had to come back down to earth, and they did it against two of the best teams in the conference. You know, at Michigan, a very tough place to go win. They covered the spread as double-digit dog, and they were very, very due for the loss. Coming back home, you host an Illinois team that you already beat once on their home gym. They're a very, very deep Illini team. And so I kind of expected this loss as well. Illinois just with that revenge spot, tough to beat a team twice, obviously. And again, Nebraska just kind of due for a letdown. Now, I think they're going to be fine in the long run. I think that's more of a testament to how good the Big Ten is. So Nebraska, couldn't get it done in these two games this weekend, but I think they'll be just fine. But I'm really impressed with the Illini going on the road and getting that tough win.
Oh, absolutely. And just with regards to the landscape of the Big Ten, I still personally do feel like Michigan is that top team, but I feel like what we're finding out over these last few weeks is that the difference between Purdue, Michigan State, Nebraska, Illinois, all those teams is very, very thin. And I do feel like out of some of the teams flying under the radar, Illinois was able to make that statement on Sunday saying, hey, you know what, maybe you've been sleeping on us for a little bit, but we should be considered for an Elite Eight Final Four type of run.
Oh, absolutely. I am very happy that I've got some Illini National Championship futures in my back pocket because they look very good. They're very deep. They're very good defensively as well, which I think is going to take them very, very far in the tournament. And they've done it these past few games without senior leader Kylan Boswell. He's, the defensive engine, kind of runs that whole offense. And we've seen freshman Keaton Wagler step up in his absence, averaging over 27 points per game with Boswell on the sideline. So it just speaks to the depth of this Illini team. And I think Brad Underwood's got this team ready to go for a big run in the tournament.
No doubt about it, as we do have our good friend Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Bets, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to the slate that we've got for Monday, it's going to be a lot of smaller games, but we do have a few big-time games. And another one of those teams that is sort of hiding, perhaps they were able to announce themselves once again on Saturday, that would be Kansas, which, as strange as it is to say, this has been a team that has been a little bit up and down this season, but they've got themselves a great opportunity here against Texas Tech to be able to put together nice back-to-back wins. Right now, we're finding them as 4.5 to 5.5 point underdogs. How do you look at both this game for Kansas and just their prospects overall?
Look, you got to tip your cap to the Jayhawks because they have clearly figured some things out. 5 straight wins, 2 of them over very, very good teams in the conference. But Lubbock's a tough place to play. It's a very tough place to go and get a win, and this is a very, very good Texas Tech Red Raiders team. And just with the Jayhawks, you've got so many question marks surrounding Darren Peterson. We saw that on Saturday. He was phenomenal in the first half. The Jayhawks as a whole were phenomenal. And then he was on the bench all second half, and that lead came dwindling down. So, look, the Jayhawks are a deep team, but I think they still rely a little too heavily on Peterson to produce all of those points that he does. What's going to happen when he's not able to go the full 40 minutes or whatever against a Texas Tech team in Lubbock? This is a tough one for me. As a Jayhawks guy, I really wish that they will be able to get this one done, but I do think Texas Tech walks away with a win. 4.5 seems maybe a bit too much for me. I'm certainly not rushing to bet the Red Raiders, but I do think I'm going to target the under in this game. Under 154.5 is what I'm seeing. I think Texas Tech's best bet is probably to slow this thing down. A lot of their offense relies on the three ball. They shoot plenty from beyond the arc, and they shoot it well, but I do think Kansas has that defensive presence to limit the three-pointers. We think that's probably going to be a focal point of Bill Self's strategy going into this game, as Richie Saunders lit them up from deep at Allen Fieldhouse. So you got to find a way to limit the Red Raiders shots from downtown, which is going to be tough to do, but I think they're capable. As far as a side, going to stay off, especially with my heart being with the Jayhawks, but I will be targeting this under 154.5.
I'm right there with you, because I do feel like for this Kansas team, the real forte of this team is the defense. Even when Darren Peterson is out there, I feel like this is a team that is going to live and die by their defense. Flory and company down low. I think that that's really become the identity of this Jayhawks team.
Oh, no doubt about it. That's what you got to do sometimes, especially when your stud is sidelined with whatever's going on. You're not going to be able to produce as many points as possible, but defensively, they are a matchup nightmare. I was very impressed with Flory Bidunga guarding A.J. Debonsa yesterday. I didn't necessarily expect that to be how Bill Self tried to challenge Debonsa, but Flory did a great job, kept his feet moving, stayed in front of the guy, and made his life tough in Allen Fieldhouse. So yes, the Jayhawks, they've got to really lean in to this defensive side of their identity, because I think that could be what propels them further in the tournament.
Will hardly agree with you, as our good friend Shaggy Betts, a.k.a. Nate Hornung, is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly Saturday was a big day for Kansas. We saw a few big-time performances out there in the Big Ten, but who are a few teams that you're looking at in the national landscape right now in college basketball that may not be getting enough love? Because I take a look at that Kansas versus Texas Tech game, and the team that Texas Tech played on Saturday, Central Florida, they got the job done. They got that outright win, and I feel like that's one of the bigger sleepers in all of college basketball. Obviously, going into Sunday, Illinois was one for me as well. They might not be as slept upon after this win, but who are a few teams that you're looking at that maybe they're not getting the fanfare that they deserve, that are sort of hiding in plain sight right now?
Yeah, a team that actually lost to that UCF Knights team earlier in the year, Texas A&M. The Aggies. And I mean, 17-4. So, I don't know if they still are flying under the radar, but they're on top of the SEC alone, 7-1 in conference play, and they're still not ranked. Now, of course, they're going to have a little number next to their name once the new AP poll comes out, but you can't deny what Bucky McMillan has done at Texas A&M. He has brought Bucky ball in full force from Samford over to College Station. This Aggies team, they get in your face defensively. Bucky said it. It's mother-in-law defense, constant nagging and harassment. And then offensively, they are fast. They are fearless. They get to the hoop plenty. They shoot it well and often from beyond the arc. They're just very, very entertaining to watch. So I'll be looking for this Texas A&M team to continue making waves as they get into probably the tougher half of the SEC. A couple of ranked matchups coming up for the Aggies. It doesn't get easier with that big SEC conference, very, very deep, but I've been very impressed with the Aggies, and I think they could bust some brackets in March.
Oh, I am right there with you. I do think that it's a lot of fun to see what we're getting out of this Aggies bunch. And just how do you take a look at this SEC in general? Because last year, it was by far the top conference in all of college basketball. This year, I think that we both agree. The Big Ten and the Big 12 has leapfrogged in front of them, but it just feels like it's a very weird landscape, because you mentioned it. Texas A&M is right now all alone in first place. I don't know if they're necessarily that top team, but it just feels like there's a lot of equals in this SEC right now.
Oh, no doubt about it. And you've got teams just beating up on each other too, specifically the Kentucky Wildcats, who I thought were kind of going to fall off a cliff, especially with the way their non-conference schedule went, with losing Jalen Lowe and Jaden Quaintance for the season. That hurts the Kentucky Wildcats, but they've impressed me recently, winning 6 of their last 7. Sure, they lost in Nashville to Vanderbilt, a very good Commodores team on the road, but at Bud Walton Arena, got the upset over the Arkansas Razorbacks. I got to give them props for what they've done recently, Can they keep it up, though, throughout the rest of this SEC schedule? I'm not totally sure, but you said it. The middle of the pack of the SEC is just, it's tough to decipher. You've got these teams like Tennessee and even Alabama, who's 4-4 in SEC play, not looking very good, put up a stinker against Florida, and even Georgia, who's got a losing record in the conference. They were ranked at one point this season, probably not going to be there anymore after losing to Texas A&M, but it's a lot to keep track of, and there are a lot of talented teams that aren't really crawling their way to the top of the conference. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole SEC plays out, but they should be at least the 6-bid league, maybe even sneaking 8 teams into the tournament.
Yep, certainly going to be interesting to see what we get out of the Texas Longhorns moving forward as well. That's a team that I think has a lot of intrigue, and we do have ourselves an interesting card for Monday. Not necessarily a ton of big games. We certainly hit on the biggest of them, in my opinion, with that Kansas versus Texas Tech game. Anything else that you might be looking at, though, because while we don't have a lot of big games are out there in the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland. You're still able to make money on them, just like the big games. Anything that's really standing out to you?
You know, I got to give love to the mid-majors and low majors, because that is who makes college basketball what it is. But I'm actually going to take you to the other bigger game of the night, Syracuse taking on North Carolina. The Tar Heels favored by 10 against the Orange at home. I'm going to go ahead and back them on that number. I think it's too much for Syracuse to keep up. This North Carolina team is fast. They're fearless, and they're very, very good defensively. And Syracuse doesn't really have an offense. They like to play slow. I don't think they're going to be able to slow this game down at all. I think the Tar Heels should have plenty of opportunities to put some points on the board. Now, obviously, they've got the big one this Saturday against Duke. Could be a bit of a look-ahead spot, but I think given that this game's Monday, they've got plenty of time to rest and reset prior to that game against Duke. I think this is a game that Tar Heels kind of use as a tune-up game as they prepare for the Blue Devils. So I'll be willing to back North Carolina minus the 10 against Syracuse on Monday.
And they certainly look good over the weekend against Georgia Tech, albeit a Georgia Tech team that, man, not been great for them over the last few years, to say the least. But I do feel like with North Carolina being able to get back one of their main guards in Seth Trimble, that's going to be able to help them out moving forward. And what helps us out moving forward is getting great guests on this podcast like you, Nate. I know you're dialed into a little bit of everything college basketball. You're getting set for what is going to be a tremendous Super Sunday as well. So all the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep, you can follow me on all social media. I'm most active, and I think I'm the funniest on Twitter/X, but all socials at Shaggy_bets. You can find me every single day hosting a podcast, Up Your Units, with my good friend Colby Marcio, and we do everything at bettingnews.com, so check out all my written work there.
Absolutely. Nate is doing such an excellent job looking at this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So a big thanks to Nate for joining me on Coast to Coast Superstar, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis out of the game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some big time. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Bets. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So big thanks to Nate for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some big shots.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we're going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. We pretty much have the bigger conference games up top, and then these are the conferences at the bottom: the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland. If we have any Big South games, and I believe we have one or two, those will be at the bottom. So the ACC, Big 12, the Ohio Valley, and the Big Sky up first, and then everything else is extra games. And it starts with 871, 872. Syracuse is on the road against North Carolina. North Carolina favored of 10 to 10.5 points. Totals between 155.5 to 157.5. And I do like the under. I did set my total here at a 154.5. We are starting to see Syracuse diminish a little bit with regards to that defense. They're down to about 49th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And North Carolina is starting to play a little bit faster, but still not playing at warp speed. They're about 149th in terms of total possessions per game. Syracuse neither here nor there, 170 177th in terms of total possessions per game, but they're just not executing on offense, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to lay with North Carolina. Said North Carolina is a 12.5 point favorite as Donnie Freeman has come back, and he's certainly been able to give this Syracuse team a lift. 19 points, 7.5 boards, shoots 34% from three, but for the Syracuse team, they continue to shoot 63.4% the free throw line. That is a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. They're outside the top 175 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Doing an okay job down low, but for this North Carolina team, they're going to completely outgun them down low. You've got Caleb Wilson and Henry Vassar, who give you a combined about 37 or 38 points, 18 rebounds per game. You do have Nate Kings, Nathan George in the backcourt for Syracuse, a combined 20 points per game, and Kings has been able to shoot 35% from three while shooting 65% the free throw line. William Kyle, 2.5 blocks per contest down low. He hasn't been too bad for this team, but again, North Carolina should be able to dominate them down low. Now it's on a North Carolina team that really has great shooting themselves at the free throw line. They shoot 67.5% the free throw line. I do think that free throws are going to cost you this over, as it is a North Carolina team that's actually a top 75 unit in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis, but for North Carolina, they're going to be able to control things down low. Top 10 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 40 team with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, and Syracuse away from home, they do allow opponents to be able to pull in there a lot of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. As a matter of fact, overall for the season, it's a Syracuse unit that, with regards to defensive rebound percentages, is both home and road. It's checking in outside the top 220. They allow teams to grab 33.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, specifically away from home. That is 302nd in the country. Seth Trimble, he's been able to give this team a little bit of a boost since he's returned from injury as well. About 14 points per contest. Recognize that Kyan Evans doesn't give you a lot of scoring, but he does a good job in terms of not turning over the ball, and that's one thing that North Carolina's done a great job of. Top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. That's been one of the fortes of Syracuse. So did some line 12.5. I'm willing to lay with North Carolina, and I like the under. It's at my total of 154.5, 873, 874. Tennessee Tech is going to be on the road against Tennessee State. Tennessee State an 8.5 to a 9.5 point favorite. Total on this game, it is between 151 to 152.5. It's about line at Tennessee and a half being a 10.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's a Tennessee State team that's very much going to be looking to bump up tempo. In terms of total possessions per game, they are 45th in the country. Tennessee Tech, neither fast nor slow. They're checking in about 184th in the country, but with this Tennessee State team, they've been able to do a much better job in terms of taking care of the ball than a season ago. Last year, they were well outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Not to say that they're the most amazing team this year, but you know what? They've cracked into the top 185 now. They do a pretty good job in terms of generating turnovers themselves. At Tennessee Tech, 335th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. On offense, they're just not really doing those little things well. They're somewhat okay in terms of pile driving the ball down low. They're not the world's worst 2-point shooting defense, but you know what? This is a team that has really been just having their issues up and down the boulevard. As a matter of fact, for Tennessee Tech, they're more around about 157th with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. Tennessee State, they can be added down low. They're more around about 247th, but with the way that Aaron Namakura for this Tennessee State team has been able to generate darn near 3 turnovers per game, with Tennessee State having a little bit more 3-point shooting than they had a season ago. They're up to about 32% from 3, which isn't much, but Travis Harper shoots 39.5% from 3, 86% free throw line with his 17.5 points per contest. Namakura, I mentioned before, 17 points was in their 5 boards, along with those 3 steals per game. You've got Dante Harris, who's been able to give you about 33% 3-point shooting, 4.5 assists. He throws in their 12 points per contest. I do think that that's going to be more than enough in this ordeal, and it's a Tennessee State team that has been a top 75 unit in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so that leaves this Tennessee Tech team all the more exposed. And Tennessee State has been a top 150 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage as well, and it's a Tennessee Tech team that has been awful with their 3-point shooting. 29.8%, that is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. Country average team with their 2-point shooting percentage, but Guy Cameron, Danny Pounds, these two guys combined for about 22.5 points per contest, and Pounds out 41% 3-point shooting, but outside these two guys, and they both shoot above 78% the free throw line, you're not having anyone else being able to give you double figures. Brandon Montu, Judge Juan Nicholls, they combine for about 18.5 points per contest, but don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Tennessee State has been able to do a good job by collective of being able to grab rebounds, with Tennessee Tech being outside the top 250 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, having someone like Jalen Petrie giving you about 6.5 rebounds per game for Tennessee State, and Tennessee State being much better at the free throw line this year at about 73.5%. I do think that for Tennessee State, they do find a way to be able to get the job done. And what I think is going to be an up and down game with Tennessee State's fast sample. Semi-total 154.5. I like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 10 here with Tennessee State. 875, 876. It is Kansas. They are going to be on the road against Texas Tech. The Ramblin' Wreck of Texas Tech are a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite. 154.5 is the total, and made my total 151. So I do like the under. You've got a Kansas team that has been playing at a relatively moderate tempo. 225th in terms of total possessions per game. Texas Tech, they are checking in 176th. And for Texas Tech, defense has not been great. 156th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been outside the top 125 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. So they are giving up some second and third chances. But Kansas really doesn't give themselves second and third chances. This is a Kansas team that is well outside the top 230 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage. They've been a top 75 unit with regards to points per possession, but that's really not their forte. It's a team that they do a nice job taking care of the ball, top 75 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they won't force turnovers on you, but they're just really good with their overall shooting percentages. They're a top 30 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, so no clean looks off of them. Darren Peterson, great name. We saw him in the first half just absolutely take over against BYU, was relatively inactive in the second half. I would expect him to go here, but how long is he going to be able to go for? Is he only going to give you 20 minutes? Is he only going to give you 15? Is he going to play the whole game? I think that you sort of have to split the difference there. Flory Banunga down low, you know what he's going to be able to give you? 2.5 blocks, 14.5 points, 9 rebounds per game, and they're going to need him against the double-double machine in one Mr. JT Toppin, who's giving you 21-plus points, 10-plus rebounds per game. But Trey White, he does shoot 43% from 3. In the end, though, I did have to set Texas Tech as a favorite of 5 points here. I'm going to be willing to lay 4.5 and nod a half a point more. I do think that they're going to find it a little bit more defensively. At home, teams only shoot 30.6% from 3-point against them. You've got Christian Anderson, who shoots 44% from the outside, 20 points, 7.5 assists per contest. Donovan Atwell's a 40% 3-point shooter with 12 points per contest. Jalen Petty, he's been able to do a nice job in terms of giving you about 9.5 or so points per contest. The big issue that you are going to have against this Kansas team is that their 3-point shooting defense has actually traveled really well. Like this entire defense for Kansas has been able to be rock solid when they've been away from home. Right now, teams are shooting from 3-point range against them overall for the season more than neighbored about 29.5% from 3. That actually goes down to 28.5% away from home. So I think they get a little bit more of a control game. Semi-total 151. I like the under. And with Texas Tech, 4.5 is the absolute max. So I'm going to be willing to lay with them. 877, 878. Idaho State is going to be on the road against Portland State. And Portland State does find themselves as a favorite here of 6 to 6.5 points. So on this game, 135.5 to 136.5. And I'm willing to take the points here with Idaho State. I did set them as an underdog of 6 points. Now I recognize I am playing a very dangerous game. Portland State has been able to cover over 70% of their games thus far this season, but it is a Portland State team that leaves themselves a little bit vulnerable to not covering numbers in a tight spot because they only shoot 69.9% the free throw line. That's outside the top 240 in all of college basketball. They are a team that's very good with their interior offense, top 80 team with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage at home, and this has been a team that's been dominant on the glass. Top 35 squad in terms of their overall rebound percentage on defense. They only allow opponents to grab about 9.1 offensive rebounds per game, and you got 2 star players. Scary Terry Miller, 19.5 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, stealing half per contest, shoots 39.5% from 3. Jalen Henderson, main facilitator, 17.5 points, 6 assists, stealing half per contest. He only shoots about 24% from 3. And then you've got Keon Kenzie, who's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. A little bit of a top-heavy team. You could use a little bit more of something like an Alex Dupree, who only gives you about 4 points per contest. But overall, these guys have been pretty strong down low, and they don't allow you to be able to get good looks from 3 either. This Portland State team has been a top 60 unit in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but Idaho State, even though they're slow, they're about 300th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. They have been 116th in terms of points per possession, and you do have guys who are able to light you up from the outside. Caleb Vandergreen, along with Connor Hollenbeck, they combine for 25.6 points per contest between the two of them, about 37.5% 3-point shooting, and they also combine for about 11.5 rebounds per game as well. It is an Idaho State team that they've been able to do a relatively solid job in terms of their overall rebounding, but that said, they do give up a lot down low. They've been outside the top 240 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, more of a country average team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Their own 3-point shooting does diminish a little bit away from home, but they've been able to do a nice job keeping things clean themselves with only about 11 turnovers per game, and they themselves are not going to put you under duress. This Portland State team, their biggest issue on offense has been being outside the top 255 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. But this Idaho State team, they're outside the top 270 in terms of generating turnovers, but I do think that Jamison Guerra being able to shoot 42% from 3, 10.5 points, 4.5 assists per contest, being able to get a block and a half per contest out of Evan Onnes. This is an Idaho State team that they allow a lot of open looks from 2-point range, but they have been a top 85 team in terms of block shot rate as well. I do think that that's just enough for them to remain in this game, and it is a Portland State team that is a top 145 145 team in terms of total possessions per game. So set a total here of a 140. I do like the over. And with Portland State made them 6-point favorites, so at the 6.5, I'm willing to take those points. Last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games, 879, 880. Sacramento State is going to be playing also Weber State, and Weber State is a small 1-to-1.5 point favorite. 165 to 166.5 is the total. Made a total of a 162. I'm in on the under. Now you do have a Sacramento State team that is very much looking to push some tempo. They are 43rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but that said, this is a squad that is not really making the most out of those possessions as they are not executing down low. This team is outside the top 270 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage. They're outside the top 330 with their own 2-point shooting percentage as well. This is a team that's able to get it going a little bit from 3-point range, and you've got Mikey Williams, who's been able to give you 13 plus points, nearly 5 assists per contest, but he doesn't necessarily shoot it well from 3. Prophet Johnson, he has been profitable, 16 plus points, 7 plus boards, steal and a half, block and a half, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. So I absolutely love what he's able to bring to the table. But for Sacramento State, right now they shoot 40.3% from 3-point range at home, 26.7% away from home. I think that split is going to iron out, especially against a Weber State team that away from home, they have been one of the best 3-point shooting defenses in all of college basketball. Right now for this Weber State squad, they're allowing teams to shoot 29% from 3-point range in a road/shoot score venue. That is 15th in all of college basketball. This is a Weber State team that they themselves have shot it quite well from 3-point range. They are shooting 36.3% from 3. That is 59th in all of college basketball. It's a Sacramento State team that's 305th in the country with regards to guarding the 3-point line as well. And I do think that with Sacramento State just having so many issues with regards to rebounding, they are 326th with regards to rebound percentage. Jeremiah Cherry, their main big man, went down earlier in the season. I'm going to really be trusting in Weber State here because you do have someone like Edwin Suarez who's able to give you 10.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. Nigel Burris, 9.5 points, 5 rebounds. Malik Goma throws in their 7 rebounds per game. So by committee, this team has been a very good rebounding team. Additionally, this is a Weber State team that can be had down low. They're outside the top 3 in terms of bonus 2-point shooting percentage, but just alluded to it. Sacramento State is doing absolutely nothing in terms of executing with regards to that interior offense. You've got a Weber State team that has been a top 150 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They dealt with a injury to their top 3-point shooter, Vijami Vartinen, who's shooting 41.5% for 3, 12.5 points per contest. He's back. Dejan Sini gives you about 15 points per game. And in a pressure spot, Weber State only shoots 71% of the free throw line. That's just outside the top 200 in all of college basketball. But even with that, Sacramento State just has not shown to be trustworthy at all in terms of just executing in any facet of their offense. I do think that Weber State going to be able to go out there, get the job done, and it should be a little bit more of an up-tempo game because Weber State, they themselves are checking in about 69th in the country in terms of total possessions range. Just don't think that Sacramento State does the part with this total. Semi-total 162. I like the under, and Weber State, I'm willing to lay with them. Made them 6-point favorite, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Boston U is going to be on the road against Holy Cross, and Holy Cross does find themselves as a very slim underdog here of 1.5 points. Total on scheme, you're going to be finding this one anywhere between 139.5 to 140.5, and with Boston U, I did set them as a favorite of 2 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 1.5. You've got two teams that are looking to play at a very, very slow tempo right now for Holy Cross. They are 340th in terms of total possessions per game. Boston U, they are 305th in the country, and neither of these defenses have been any good whatsoever. I will have to say that, but for Boston U, this is a team that absolutely lights you up from 3-point range, 33rd in the country, shooting 37.1% from 3. Now, that does go down to about 35% away from home, and there's one thing that Holy Cross has done an okay job of, it's being able to guard the 3-point line, as Holy Cross is actually 128th in the country in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. Boston U is actually 356th, but strangely, Boston U allows teams to shoot 44% from 3-point range at home. That goes down to about 35% away from home, but that said, you've got a pair of teams that, they're just not doing the greatest job in terms of being able to execute on offense. Either Holy Cross, right now in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, a nice hearty 294th in all of college basketball. Boston U with that 3-point shooting, they've actually been a top 110 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I think that you're in for a big time slog of a game. I did set my total at a 140 mainly because I do think that you're going to be able to get some late game following here, so between 139.5 to 140.5. Personally, I would rather take a 139.5 over rather than a 140.5 to the under, mainly because with Boston U, you do have Michael Air McNair who's been able to give you 16 points. He shoots from 3-point range 45% for 3. Sam Hughes, 36.5% 3-point shooter, 9.5 points per game, and I do trust in Boston U here because they're going to have the best rebounder, Ben Defty, 14.5 points, nearly nearly 7 rebounds, block and a half per contest. And for Holy Cross, you do bring back Joe Nugent from 8 seasons ago. He's been able to give you nearly 3.5 to 4 rebounds per game at 6'6", shoots in the mid-30s from 3, about 11 to 12 points per contest. Tyler Boston has been able to give you about 14 points per game, and he shoots about 36.5% from 3. But this Holy Cross team, outside the top 340 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they're a bottom 15 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage as well, so they're not executing there. They don't put you under duress outside the top 300 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And outside of Gabe Warren, along with Boston and Nugent, you don't have a single player that gives you double figures as well. Very thin rotation, and I do think that allows Boston, even with how bad their defense is, to be able to get the job done. At a 139.5, I'm in on the overhand. With Boston U, I'm willing to lay up to a 1.5 with them. 36-503, 36-504. Florida A&M is on the road against Alabama State. Alabama State finds themselves as a favorite of 2 to 2.5 points. 144 to 145 is the total, and I did set a total of 152. I like the over. You have two teams that are going to be looking to push some tempo. Right now, Florida A&M 104th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Alabama State, they've been able to do a good job going up and down a little bit themselves at about 64th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And Alabama State has had one of the funkiest home and road splits with their 3-point shooting percentage I've ever seen. A respectable 34% from 3-point range away from home, 23% at home. I do think that this irons out. You got a Florida A&M team that is right around about 215th in the country in terms of both opponents' 3-point shooting percentage and points allowed on a per possession basis. So they've been a neither here nor there defense. And for Florida A&M, the biggest thing for them has been the turnovers being so costly. In games played away from home, they are outside the top 340 in terms of raw security, and they're only 344th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For Alabama State, they have fallen on some tough times with regards to their offense as well. They are down to right around about 313th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, with scoring 9.3 points per 100 possessions fewer at home rather than away from home. Again, I think that irons out, especially with a Florida A&M team that they just have not been able to do the world's greatest job on the glass or outside the top 275 in terms of rebound percentage. Now, they do get helped out by Micah Octave, who missed the first 9 or so games of the season, gives you 9.7 rebounds per game, and he is the lone guy in the roster. That gives you over 5 rebounds per game. Jordan Chapman has been able to do a nice job, give you about 9.5 points per contest. And for Florida A&M, they overall for this conference play, shooting about 33% per 3, 74% the free throw line. That's much better than they were in non-conference play. Non-conference play, they were shooting about 62% at the free throw line. This is an Alabama State team that will put you on the free throw line because they are a team that gambles for turnovers. Really, both of these teams are. Both of these teams, top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. But that's it for this Alabama State team. You've got two guys in as John Anderson, Micah Simpson, who've been able to combine for just over 31 points per contest between the two of them. They shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. It's an Alabama State team that additionally should be able to get some second and third chances. They've been a top 175 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They certainly give it up on defense. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but they've got by far the best low post presence in this game. Jaquarius Standback, pair of blocks, 5 boards, 8 points per contest. He's got relatively good size. I think that that's enough for Alabama State to be able to get the job done, and I do think that those home and road splits really start to iron out here in a game that should involve a lot of fouls and a lot of trips to the free throw line. Semi line at 8. I'm going to be willing to lay with Alabama State, and like the over semi total 152. 306-505, 306-506, Southeast Louisiana. It's going to be on the road against Lamar, and Lamar does find themselves as a favorite of 5.5 points on this game between 133.5 and 134.5. Do like the under semi-total at a 131.5. Have a Southeast Louisiana squad that is not looking to push tempo, 311th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Lamar a skoge faster, but not much faster, 301st in terms of total possessions per game. And it's a Lamar team that shoots so well from 3. They're 129th. They shoot about 34.8% from 3. Southeast Louisiana does not shoot it well from 3-point range. They're overall 333rd in terms of points per possession. They shoot 35.9% for 3, which goes on to 26.6% away from home. And man, for this Southeast Louisiana team, they are looking for scoring options right now. You've got two guys that give you double figures in Jeremiah Elise along with Isaiah Gaines. Both supply you with about 11 points per contest. You've been able to get a little bit of something out of Peter Heschemeister, who has been dealing with a little bit of injury. 8 points, 2.5 assists per contest. He shoots 31% from 3. And right now, Mekhi Miles, who averages 8 points per game, shoots 37% from 3. Lone guy on the roster that truly sees minutes that shoots above 32% from 3. It's not great to say the least. And forte of this Southeast Louisiana team being a top 75 145 unit in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they are one of those teams that sort of gambles for turnovers. They're outside the top 175 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and they're not even executing inside. They're outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. Meanwhile, you've got a Lamar squad that has a pair of guys in Andrew Holyfield, Rob Lee, who have been able to do a nice job headlining things. Holyfield is 6'10", shoots 35% for 3, 14 points, 5 boards per contest. Lee chips in there a pair of assists, 16 points. He's shooting 42% for 3. Brandon East shoots about 43% for 3, 11.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and for Lamar, they have been a little bit sloppy with the ball. They're outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they leave themselves open from 3-point range. But again, Southeast Louisiana has absolutely no 3-point shooting whatsoever, and Lamar has a big-time advantage on the glass. This is a Lamar team that ranks in the top 70 in terms of rebound percentage. Southeast Louisiana in the neighborhood about 300. They allow opponents to grab over 32% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound when they're away from home. I think that that's enough for Lamar to be able to get the job done here. Set them as a 7.5-point favorite. 1 to lay up to 7 with Lamar. In on the under, semi-total 131.5. 306-507, 306-508. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin plays host to McNeese. McNeese finds themselves as a road favorite of 2.5 to 3 points. 141.5 to 142.5 is the total. Set McNeese as a 2.5-point favorite. 3 becomes my buy point on Stephen F. Austin, and I love the Stephen F. Austin team. I wish I could set them as a favorite. Here's the reason why I could not, though, and I think that you're going to understand it when I put it down here. For the Stephen F. Austin team, out of 365 Division I teams, that's taken last in terms of home free throw shooting percentage at 60.7%. You know, it's really tough in a pick'em game like this when you have a team that's dead last in terms of free throw shooting percentage. Like, everything else about Stephen F. Austin is good. They're a slow tempo team, 287th in terms of total possessions per game. They're a top 45 team in terms of taking care of the ball. Fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They don't generate turnovers the way that they did a season ago, but 17th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But in a nip-and-tuck game against a McNeese team that leads the country in terms of generated on a per possession basis, they themselves are 64th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Just makes me not be able to trust them here on the money line. I'm willing to take 3, but I need at least 3 to be able to do so. Keon Thompson, 17.5 points, 5 boards. He shoots about 32% for 3. And near it, Chukanovich, hopefully I said that correct. He shoots 40% for 3, 10.5 points per game. Cam Burton, easier name. He shoots also 40+% from 3-point range. And then you had Jared Cologne will come in, give you 7.5 boards, 2.5 blocks. Only provides 5 points per game, but he's the really engine down low that makes this Stephen F. Austin defense run. And then on the flip side for McNeese, you've been able to have just a lot of guys be able to come up with turnovers for this team. Out of your top 4 scorers, 3 of them give you at least 1.6 steals per contest, with Tyson Archie, along Javon Garcia being able to combine for about 25.5 points per contest. And between the two of them, they shoot about 38% from 3-point range. You've had Gawari Duel provide good versatility, 9 points, 4 assists. Not necessarily going to light you up from 3 or anything like that, but he does a good job flowing good, clean offense. And even someone like Jarrell Colbert, who doesn't see a lot of minutes, he's able to give you 3.5 boards, right around about a block per contest as well. So I mean, this team has been very stout down low, but this team just doesn't really shoot it well from 3-point range. McNeese, they're outside the top 270 with their own 3-point shooting percentage. Now, in a pressure spot, they actually shoot 77% of the free throw line, and again, that's a big reason why I was willing to set them as a small favorite here. And you take a look at McNeese in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they've been able to do a good job of executing here. 67th in the country. Stephen F. Austin, even with how bad their free throw shooting is, they're actually about 92nd in the country, but in the end, I do think that the defense wins out. Both of these teams outside the top of 285 in terms of total possessions per game. Think that you get a little bit of a slog. So one thing 3+ here for Stephen F. Austin, and I'm in on the under, so my total at 138.5, 306-509, 306-510. New Orleans, they're on the road against East Texas A&M. East Texas A&M finds themselves as a slim underdog here of 1.5 to 2 points. Dawn's game 149.5 to 150.5. Semi-total at 150.5, so 149.5 is my max buy point on the over. You've got an East Texas A&M team that has been tempo, 160th in terms of total possessions per game. This New Orleans squad, they're more around about 108th, and the big key for this New Orleans team, they have to do a better job on the turnover front in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. On defense, they're well outside the top 300 with that regard, and on offense, 351st in terms of their ball security in games played away from home. They're a bottom 15 team in terms of taking care of the ball, but not like East Texas A&M is doing any better. At home, they're a bottom 20 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. So both of these seem really sloppy. East Texas A&M has been a top 100 team in terms of being able to generate turnovers, but East Texas A&M getting blasted on the glass. 325th with regards to rebound percentage. New Orleans is 122nd, and that's a big reason why I did set New Orleans as a 2.5-point favorite. Going to be willing to lay up to a deuce with them. You do have a pair of guys in this New Orleans backcourt, and Javakivion Buckley along Colton Benson. They combine for about 29.5 points per contest. Benson shoots 36% for 3, and in a pressure spot, New Orleans shoots 75% of the free throw line, and that's a top 85 mark in the country. Benson himself shoots 73% of the free throw line. MJ Thomas, 11.5 points, 8 boards. Churchill Abis, he doesn't give you as many rebounds, but he comes in after spending some time at Wake Forest Forrest, Paul, 2 blocks, 5.5 boards, 8 points per contest. So these guys have been able to do a really good job in tandem. And then on the flip side of things, you've got an East Texas A&M team that does have Ronnie Harrison, who comes over after he was over at Tarleton last season, leading the way with 15 points, 6 boards, shoots 35% per 3, but it's still an East Texas A&M team that has been all sorts of ghastly with regards to their offense. They're one of the worst rebound rate teams in the country. They're 343rd in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and if you look just strictly at their home games, because they actually average 3.7 points fewer at home per 100 possessions rather than away from home, this goes down to either 358th or 359th, depending upon the day that you look, because this team just has no perimeter offense whatsoever. Right now, they're shooting 30.6% from three-point at home. That's outside the top 10 in the country. G&I Hunt has been able to give you about 9 points. He was part of that Elite Eight team of Oregon State back in the day, so he's been the Van Wilder of college basketball, 4.5 assists per game, but not a lot of help around him. Vinny Sagana has been able to give you 8.5 points, shoots it relatively well from 3, has been a little bit banged up, has come back from injury, and he's starting to look a little bit more 100%, but with this team being as vulnerable as they are down low, as they're outside the top 200 as well, with their 2-point shooting percentage, they only shoot 67% of the free throw line. In a tight spot, I think the New Orleans gets the job done. Willing to lay up to 2 with New Orleans, and here at the total, I set mine at a 150.5, so 150 or less in on the over. 3 is 6-5, 11, 3 is 6-5, 12. Nicholls is going to be on the road against Northwestern St. The Demons of Northwestern St. do find themselves as a favorite of a point to a point and a half total on this game. It is 145.5. I like Nicholls here on the money line. I did set them as a 3-point favorite. This Nicholls team has been one of the better teams in all of college basketball in terms of generating turnovers. You look at them in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and currently they are checking in that neighborhood of the top 20 in all of college basketball. As a matter of fact, they are 10th, and Northwestern State 292nd in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. That is not great, to say the least. This is on a Nicholls team that's necessarily going to overwhelm me down low or anything like that, but I love what Jalik Dunkley has been able to bring to the table. 13.5 points, 7 boards, shoots about 32% from 3, and then you've been able to have some really good versatility with about 5 boards, 14.5 points out of Jalen Surreals, who shoots 37.5% from 3. Nicholls has become a top 150 team with their 3-point shooting percentage. Where they get hurt is down low. They're outside the top 275 in their own 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and I will say in a tight spot, they do shoot just 66.2% of the free throw line. That's the bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball, but that said, on the flip side, you've got a Northwestern State team that's just hard to have any confidence in them whatsoever, because you've got one guy on the roster that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, and they're just getting absolutely dump trucked there. Now, for Northwestern, Willie Williams has actually been very good with regards to hitting the boards, as right now he's given the team 8 rebounds, 9 points per contest, just under a steal per game. Again, nobody else gives you over 3.3 rebounds per game, so they're getting absolutely blasted there. Micah Thomas has been a nice go-to scorer, 17 points per game, 37.5% 3-point shooter, and 93% of the free throw line. That's very good. Izzy Miles, he shoots 46% per 3 with 10.5 points per contest, so this team that shoots 34.5% per 3, they should be able to get some open looks, but Northwestern State, despite the fact that they're outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, they're 333rd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, because they're also outside the top 315 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. They're getting absolutely blasted on the glass, and Northwestern State, with them not really generating a lot of turnovers themselves, I do think that Nicholls finds a way to get the job done and be able to get enough points for the over. Semi-total of 149. I like the over, and Nicholls on the money line. 3 is 6-5, 13, 3 is 6-5, 14. He's Christian on the road against UT Rio Grande Valley. The Vaqueros of UT Rio Grande Valley, 8.5 to 9-point favorites. 138.5 is the total line. I did set UT Rio Grande Valley as a 10.5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Grand Valley has had some of the most strange home and road splits I think I've ever seen in my life, as for this UT Rio Grande Valley team, they're shooting about 40% from 3-point range away from home, and then at home they shoot just a hair above 30%. Like, it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. You've got a Houston Christian team that honestly has not been the world's worst in terms of being able to generate offense. They're not great, but I mean, they're about 226th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Grand Valley, they're right there, 219th in the country. Again, with Grand Valley, they're averaging about 6.5 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but here's where Houston Christian goes wrong. 323rd in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. They're also outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They are getting just absolutely pile-driven off the boards. Now, Grand Valley, they're about 260th in the country with regards to rebound percentage. percentage, but Houston Christian away from home, they're well outside the top 230 themselves, and I do think that Grand Valley does find a way to be able to iron out those very, very strange home and road splits and get it done, because they do have just a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach with Marvin McGee, Phil Brankovic, and Corey Cotton, all give between 10.4 and 12.5 points per contest. McGee has been able to shoot 41.5% from three, and all three of these guys, Brankovic, Cotton, and McGee, give you between 4.3 and 5 boards per contest. You've had Jalen Washington be able to give you about 3.5 assists, 8 points, a steal per contest. It's a Grand Valley team that's been a country average team, both in terms of taking care of the ball and turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they've been a top 125 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. So Houston Christian not going to be able to get a lot of good looks there, and for the Houston Christian bunch, they just have not really been able to execute well with regards to being able to pop it from 3-point range, as they're only shooting about 32.5% from 3 outside the top 225 in the country, with Elijah Brooks, their top scorer going into the year, being out with injury. Now, you do have Trent Johnson shooting 44.5% from 3. He's been able to give you 9 points per contest, but he's the only out of your top 5 scorers that shoots above 33% from 3-point. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 4.7 rebounds per game. That'd be DeMarco Bethea, and for this Houston Christian team, if they need to cover at the free throw line, they shoot 68.2%. That is outside the top 300 in all of college basketball, and for Houston Christian, hovering right around about 300th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense as well. I do think that UT Rio Grande Valley finds a way to get the job done, and with the overall inefficiency that you've got with this Houston Christian team, I think they get enough points for the over, and Grand Valley should see some positivity with their offense at home. So my total at a 140.5, I like the over, and Grand Valley, I'm willing to lay up to 10 with them. 306-515, 306-516. Southern's on the road against Jackson State. Jackson State, a home underdog of 3.5 to 4.5 points. 152.5 is the total, and made a total of 151.5. I'm going to be in on the under. Now, this is a Southern team that's looking to play very fast, 37th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but keep in mind, they had that double overtime game against Washington that did warp their numbers a little bit, and it's a Jackson State team that has been playing fast, 70th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but the offense just has not been able to click all season long, and for Jackson State, they are really just getting blown torch down low. They're well outside the top 300 with regards to their overall rebound percentage. It's a Jackson State team that honestly doesn't do the world's worst job in terms of guarding the arc, 204th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and I think that could be just enough to be able to keep you under. It is a Jackson State unit that has a 20-plus point per game scorer in Deshaun Ruffin, who he began his career over at Ole Miss, has never really been like a light-you-up 3-point shooter, but he's been a little bit better this year as he's providing good versatility with about 5.5 assists per game, still only shooting about 31% per 3, but Dorian McMillan, Jamie Mitchell, they've been able to combine for about 24 points per game. They give you, between the two of them, 8.6 rebounds per game, and outside those two guys, you've only got one other player on the roster that gives you over 3 rebounds per game. That'd be Dejounte Thomas, who he was missing for the first 8 games of the season, 4 points, 5.7 rebounds per game. This team just does not have a lot down low, and I recognize that Southern is not necessarily monsters of the midway down low, but Malik Ajwald, who comes over from UMass, he's been able to do a solid job. He's giving you right around about 7.5 rebounds per game, 12 points per game, and Michael Jacobs, he's been a really nice go-to scorer, 20.5 points, 5 assists, shoots 37.5% per 3. Southern as a unit just a little bit below country average with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, but it is a Southern team that's much more respectable on the glass, and for the Southern team, the name of the game for them is always generating turnovers. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, they're not quite back to where they were last year when they were like a top 25 team, but they're 61st in all of college basketball, with Jackson State having so many turnover woes. They're outside the top 300 with that regard. I do think that Southern finds a way to be able to get the job done, and what should be an up and down game, but a game that I think has a lot of dead possessions. I set my total at a 151.5, so 152 plus in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 5 here with Southern 306-517, 306-518. Maryland Eastern Shore is on the road against NC Central. NC Central 3.5 point favorites, 135.5 to 136.5 is the total, and I set my total at a 126.5. Like, where are we gonna be getting these 136.5 points from? You've got two teams that are super slow, especially Maryland Eastern Shore. Like, their games are almighty slogs. In terms of total possessions per game, this Maryland Eastern Shore team is clocking in outside the top 330 in all of college basketball. For Maryland Eastern Shore, actually a halfway respectable defense, as right now in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're a top 250 team there, but that said, NC Central 358th in terms of points per possession, specifically at home. Maryland Eastern Shore 358th in the country in terms of points per possession overall, and you got an NC Central team that is not taking care of the ball, 278th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Maryland Eastern Shore 362nd, and NC Central, they're more around about 245th in terms of total possessions per game. So, I mean, it's just absolutely incredible what we're seeing here, and I did set my line at a 2.5, so I'm actually going to be willing to take the points with Maryland Eastern Shore, mainly because with this Maryland Eastern Shore team, I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job holding up on the defensive side of things, while they're a team that absolutely gives up the ball. They have been a top 225 team in terms regards to generating turnovers, they're a top 150 team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and NC Central, just as Zach Flick down low, you've got Joseph Lusardo, who's been able to give you 10.5 points per contest. Eastern Shore does not have a single guy that gives you over 5 rebounds per game. As a matter of fact, only one player that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, Zion Oblana, who's been able to give you 9.5 points, right around about 5 rebounds per game. This team leaves so much to be desired on the offensive side of things, but I mean, still, for this North Carolina Central team, you've only got really 2 guys that give you over 8.5 points per game. You've had Gage Lattimore supply 18.5 points, shoots 38% for 3, 88% the free throw line. Corey Carvey, 14.5 points. He is able to give you right around about 6.5 rebounds per game as well, but outside that, it's just a lot of mixing and matching. Deontay Johnson, he gives you about 6 assists, 6 points, 2.5 steals, so he does a nice job setting other guys up, but there's not a lot of other guys to set up. And again, with NC Central outside the top 290 in terms of their own 2-point shooting percentage, in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they're outside the top 250 with their ball security. They also have been a top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, so I think you're going to get a lot of sloppiness in this game. When it's all said and done, I think Maryland Eastern Shore, with the way that they lock down on defense, their good 3-point shooting defense keeps them lively here, so I set my line at 2.5. I'm willing to take 3+ here with the Shore, and I'm in on the under semi total at a 126.5. 3-6-5-19, 3-6-5-20. Grambling is going to be on the road against Alcorn St, and Alcorn St is a underdog here, 4.5 to 5.5 points. 143.5 is the total, and I did set my total here at a 147.5. I like the over. Alcorn St, a fast but not necessarily warp speed team in terms of total possessions per game. They're just a hair outside the top 100, hovering more in that neighborhood of about 121st. Meanwhile, you've got a Grambling team that, again, they're fast but not necessarily super duper fast, 173rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they generate turnovers. They're 6th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they're sort of a team that gambles for turnovers, 199th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 255 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, country average in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but Alcorn St does shoot 35+% from 3-point range, but for this Grambling team, I'm going to be willing to lay it because they should be able to get to an Alcorn St unit that is in the bottom 10 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Roger Coffey is grinding hard. He's giving you 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists, stealing half per contest, shoots 46.5% from 3-point range. Ricky Ballard is out shooting 46% from 3, 7.5 points per contest. Antonio Munoz, he's been an underrated freshman who's been able to give you a pair of assists, a steal, 12 points per contest. So all these guys are really buying in to the Patrick Curry system. And in terms of conference play for the Grambling team, they've been able to do a little bit of a better job on the glass as well. They've got a positive rebound differential, though in conference play, they're also allowing teams to shoot about 37.5% from 3-point range, and that'll work to the advantage of Alcorn St. Again, I do think that Alcorn St holds in there, but I could only set them as a 5.5 point dog, so at the 4.5, I'm willing to lay with Grambling, mainly because for Alcorn St, they are a team that's about 300th in the country with regards to their free throw shooting percentage, and they just turn the ball over too much. They're outside the top 350 in terms of ball security. You only have 2 guys that give you double figures. Tyson McDaniels with about 10.5 points. He throws in there about 5 rebounds per game. Shane Lancaster, 12 points. He shoots 50% from 3-point range, but outside of McDaniels, somebody else gives you over 4.2 rebounds per game, so they're going to get blasted with that regard. It is an Alcorn St team that's outside the top 345 with both their own 2-point shooting percentage and opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, so I think that they lose this game from within. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 5 here with Grambling, and I do like the over. I set my total at a 147.5. 306-521, 306-522. Bethune Cookman is going to be on the road facing off against Alabama A&M. A&M is a home underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. 141.5 to 142.5 is the total, and I set my total at a 146. I'm going to be willing to take a shot on the over. You've got a Bethune Cookman team that has scored now at least 79 points in 4 out of their last 5 games as the Dr. Bradley is back. He was missing for all of non-conference play in the last 4 games that he has played. He's given the team at least 12 points and 9 rebounds in every one of them. That helps out the Heedy brothers, as you've had Jacoby Heedy right now supply the team with 17.5 points, 5 boards. He shoots 41% from 3, and then Quinton Heedy, he's been rock solid, being able to give you about 10 points. He shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Ontario Morris was expecting perhaps a little bit more out of him. He's had a little bit of a rough go here in conference play with about 11 points, 3 assists per contest, but he's able to generate about 2 steals per game. The biggest thing for Bethune Cookman taking care of the ball, they have been outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but you have an Alabama A&M team that's about 166 in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. On defense, that's below average with regards to this conference, and for Bethune Cookman, they're very willing to put you on the free throw line. They're a top 40 team in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, and have an Alabama A&M team that shoots about 73.5% of the free throw line. That's much better than them being outside the top 250 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but feels like this offense is starting to click. For Alabama A&M, they've gotten to at least 73 points in each of their last 4 games. Katavius Dozier, he followed his coach on over from Grambling, and Dante Jackson, he's right now your top scorer scorer with about 16 points, pair of assists, shoots 32% from 3. James Graham, he's been in and out of the lineup, 7.5 points, shoots it well from 3-point range. He's been able to return, and he's been able to give the team double figures in 2 out of the last 3 games. You have a team that is in the top 150 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, not going to grab a lot of second and third chances on the offensive glass, with PJ Eason is able to give you about 8 or so rebounds per game. I do, though, think that in the end, Dr. Bradley, a guy that led the country in terms of free throw attempts per game, he was averaging over at Pine Bluff 18 plus points per contest. I think that he's the difference here for Bethune Cookman. So I did set Cookman as the 2-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to a 1.5 with them. I like the over. I saw my total at a 146, 306, 523, 306, 524. Incarnate Word is on the road against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi is a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. 137.5 is the total, and I made a total here of a 133. I'm going to be in on the under. You've got a pair of teams that are not looking to push tempo. Incarnate Word 297th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. A&M Corpus Christi, they're playing a little bit faster, but that's not really saying a whole heck of a lot for Corpus Christi. Right now, they are 278th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Corpus Christi has been very good in terms of generating turnovers. We'll say for Incarnate Word, this team is a top 125 team in terms of their ball security, but for Corpus Christi, 35th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. It is a Incarnate Word team that's not going to put you under duress outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for this Corpus Christi unit, you've been able to have a trio of guys in Sheldon Williams, Nicholas Shanbanyo, along with Mason Gibson. That'll give you 10.5 to 11.5 points per contest, and Gibson shoots 41% from 3. Corpus Christi is honestly a country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage, just not executing well down low. They're outside the top 290 with regards to their own 2-point shooting percentage, but Corpus Christi has also been able to do a really good job in terms of owning the glass, which is going to make for a little bit of an interesting battle, because you do have an Incarnate Word team that has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of giving themselves some second and third chances, top 140 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, you've got a Texas A&M Corpus Christi team that they themselves have been very good on the defensive glass in terms of not allowing second chances. They're outside the top 200 with regards to their offensive rebound percentage, but they do find themselves in terms of percentage of missed shots to become an offensive rebound, a top 180 team there. And for Texas A&M Corpus Christi, Williams has been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, so he's been a helper there. And then you've had Franek Yetna be able to supply about 7 points, 4 boards, a steal per contest, so lots of nice mixing and shaking there, and they don't allow good 3-point shots as they're a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. But for Incarnate Word, I love the backcourt of this team, having Taj Stavetsky coming over from Cleveland State, Davion Bailey. He is a returner from last year, both guys between 17.7 and 17.8 points per game. They combine to shoot 36% from 3, and then Jordan Pike, 12 points, 5 boards, shoots mid-30s from 3. He's been able to give you some good versatility. Could use a little bit more. I've loved Bettis, only about 4 points per game. Was expecting a little bit more there, but for this Incarnate Word team, they really push you off the 3-point line. They make you pile drive the ball inside, and they themselves have been outside the top 300 with their own 2-point shooting percentage, but they're a team that as a collective, they shoot 37.5% for 3 if you include their non-D1 games. I think that that's just enough for them to be able to remain lively, but in the end, I do think the Corpus Christi, way that they generate turnovers, the way that this Corpus Christi team has been able to do a nice job in terms of just controlling games in general, I do think that they find a way to get it done in what is going to be a very low possession game. Semi-total at a 133, so I'm going to be in on the under, and with Corpus Christi, I made them a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number 365.25, 365.26. Gardner Webb is on the road against Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern, 16.5 to 17.5 point favorites. It's on this game between 157.5 to 158.5. I set Charleston Southern as a 22.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Gardner Webb. This is really not good. 363rd in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. There's 365 Division I teams, and they're in the bottom 3 of both categories. And then they're 361st in terms of their overall rebound percentage. Now, you've been able to get a little bit of something out of Jacob Hovereth and Spence Sims. They combine for 21.2 points per game, and they actually combine to shoot about 45% from 3, but that's because they play a very, very low volume. Hogarth has been able to give you 7 rebounds per game. Other than Jacob Hudson, who's been dealing with injury, nobody else on the roster gives you over 3.2 rebounds per game. It's really, really sad what we're seeing out of these guys. Hudson should be good to go, but he's been very limited over the last few games. Meanwhile, you've got a Charleston Southern team that's not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they've been able to really not allow good looks whatsoever. They're a top 30 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, top 90 team in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and they themselves shoot about 35 or so percent from 3-point range. Alan Sumler, Bryson Blaine, they've been able to combine for 36 points per game, and Sumler shoots 40% from 3, 35 for Blaine, and then additionally, you've got Jesse Hafemeister, who's been able to give you 11.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Even though this team doesn't generate a lot of turnovers, they do a nice job with their low post defense, with Reese Jones giving you about 5 boards, block and half per contest. They were dealing with some injuries with the Bradford brothers. They should be both good to go in this game as well. It is a unit in Charleston Southern that turns the ball over about 13 times per game. They're outside the top 275 with regards to their own ball security. But again, this Gardner Webb team, they're well outside the top 250 in terms of generating turnovers. They've got absolutely no backcourt play whatsoever, and they themselves give the ball away nearly 14 times per contest. And this defense is so sad and so deplorable that when they face off against North Greenville, a non-Division I team this year, they gave up 92 points on their home floor. Now, I just don't know if Gardner Webb does their part with the total, even with Charleston Southern being 12th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So I did set a total here of a 156.5, here 157.5, 158. I'm in on the under, but with Charleston Southern made them 22.5 point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and we wrap things up with 306.527, 306.528. You've got Howard on the road against Coppin St. Coppin St at 12.5 to a 13-point underdog. So on this game, 146 to 146.5, and I set my total 144.5. I'm in on the under. Howard has actually slowed themselves down from past years. Total possessions per game, they're about 158th, and Coppin St finds themselves as a relatively mid-tempo team, 154th in terms of total possessions per game. And for Coppin State, I wish I could put it any other way, but I just don't think that they do their part with the total in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a nice hearty 360th in all of college basketball. We'll say that at home, they're averaging about 13.7 points more per 100 possessions than away from home, but I don't have a single guy in the roster that's able to give you double figures for Coppin State. They just do not find a way to be able to give you any good offense on the inside. They actually shoot 41% from three-point range at home, but the forte for this Howard team has been their three-point shooting defense has been traveling all season long for this Howard group. Right now, overall for the season, 146th in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, but that goes down to 34.4% in a road/score venue. That is a top 30 mark in all of college basketball, and Howard has by far the top scorer in this game, as Bryce Harris has done it all, 17 points, 7 boards, 2.5 assists. Only shoots about 32% from three, but now they've got Cedric Taylor back. He was missing for non-conference play. He's been able to, in the 10 games that he's played, give you 14 points, 6.5 boards, 3 assists, steal and a half per contest. It's a Howard team that's been very good in terms of generating turnovers. Top 50 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And for this Coppin State team, guess what they're doing? 15.8 turnovers per game. That's a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. And then for Coppin State, as bad as the offense is, they might actually be even worse on defense. Out of 365 Division I teams in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they are a bottom 3 team in all of college basketball. They're getting absolutely wiped out on the glass, 347th with regards to defensive rebound percentage. If you just look at the overall points allowed on a per possession basis, 361st in all of college basketball, and specifically their home games are second worst in the country. And for Coppin State, they're just a team that's looking for answers right now. You've had Khalil Horton be able to give you about 8 points per contest, so here's here in the Who being able to give you some scoring. And DeMonte Hall, who was missing for about 9 or so games, he's been able to come back and he's been able to give you about 9.5 points per game, 5.5 boards, so he's been able to give this team a little bit of a lift. But right now this team is just a big giant wet match in the dark cave. I'm going to be one away with Howard. I set them as a 14.5 point favorite, and like the under, semi-total 144.5, and that wraps things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to our good friend Shaggy Betts, a.k.a. Nate Hornung. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, give you picks and analysis on every game, every day, so I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.